And they ask, Gideon, where have you been? They clamor to hear the testimony. No, but seriously, seriously. I started talking about my journey in athletics last week in a video, and I was going through the genesis of the whole thing, how it started when I was in China. And to continue from where I left off, I was talking about how I was able to get into a track club in China and meet this great guy who was my first coach ever. Um, and as the story would have it, I was about to graduate at the time, at least it was my final year. And I remember that at some point, the university stopped allowing students to go off campus again and some stuff like that, unless you were going to like leave. Let's say you were traveling out of the country or you were leaving somewhere, then they would let you go and then you have to stay off campus, which was the only option at the time. So I remember being able to finesse my way into doing something like that. Um, and then I had to go renew my passport actually. So I left where I was and I went to the capital city of Beijing and I was there for a little while. And then I went to the south. Long story, long story. Anyways, because it was like super cold in the north, and I went to the south looking for a warmer climate to train because my team that I was training with at the time, my coach, I also expected that they would be going somewhere in the south where it was a bit warmer to train. And then they ended up not doing that. So I was in the south for a while, for a few months. Um, and bro, that is a whole nother story in itself, man. Oh my goodness. If I was to tell every single detail, it would be way too long. But then I was on my own for a while, and then I started trying to work out on my own. Finally, I came back um, to a city near where my university was after like 3 months. I didn't go back on campus, and I started to just to go back to training. I would literally take a bus from the nearby city, which is called Shenyang, and then the city of my university was called Fushun, and I would take a bus from there to training every day, which was like 1 hour 30 minutes. But before I did that, I would have to take the metro and blah blah blah, and it would like the journey to get there every day would be about maybe 2 hours because I take a bus from that city to another city, then take a bus when I get to that city to get to training, and then I'll do the same thing to go home every day. And no wonder, at some point my body was so banged up, man, and I was always hurt and I was always in pain. Like my body was always aching and I was going through a lot of stuff. And at some point, I talked to my coach and we figured that okay, you know what, maybe I can just be following the program from the city that I'm in. So I just trained in that city. After a couple of months, um, actually I got injured, so I couldn't train for months. And then when I came back, I started training in the city where I was instead of going all the way because I talked to my coach about it and I had to prepare for graduation because I was doing my stuff and all that, final year stuff. So I was doing all that and I was able to finish. I graduated and then it was like rush hour to leave China because some of the cities were getting going back into lockdown again and all that. And by the grace of God, it's just a funny story. I was able to leave the very last day um, of the expiry date of my visa. That was the very last day I was able to leave. I wanted to leave before, if I could have, I would have, but it was difficult, and I had to travel from the north, I think, to the south. I was in Beijing, and I had to travel all the way to Shanghai, and then from Shanghai to it was wild, man. And then Beijing got locked down a few days later. God was just gracious to me. So I leave China, and a couple of months later, I arrive in Italy. And while I was in China, I couldn't compete because if you're a foreign national, you were not allowed to compete in China. I know it's a bit strange, but yeah, that was the case. And so I get to Italy, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. I'm finally gonna be able to compete. But then I have to go through a lot of bureaucracy as well. And for a whole year, I could not compete. I just started training and it was interesting. It was very interesting. It was very different from how I used to train when I was in China. My body took a very long time to respond to the new type of training. I don't even know if my body ever truly, fully responded to it, if I'm being honest. You know, so that leads me to the next part of the story where I would then change trainer, and then go into 2023, and I was able to compete for the first time. And if I'm not mistaken, it was January 7th or January 8th in a 60-meter race indoor. But guess the funny thing, the very week of that race, right? I was feeling good, like leading up into the race, but the very week I got like food poisoning and I couldn't train for like a day or two. And then I got new shoes, you know, just some naive kind of or inexperienced thinking. I got new shoes that I wasn't familiar with, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna run in these. And I was still coming off the effects of food poisoning. And I go into the race. It was terrible, man. I ran like 740 in the 60. And I was like, man, that was not fun, you know. But I'm gonna stop that story right here because it'll get a lot more interesting and deeper, as I go forward, and then I talk about all the struggles that involve the sport, you know, and the things that I've gone through, and really not really just about the sport, but the element or the aspect of faith that involves everything that I do, and how sometimes you really have to hang on to God and try and understand what God is doing. Man, there are times where, honestly speaking, I've been so upset at whatever it is God is doing. I've been like, God, what exactly are you doing? There's times when I felt betrayed by God. I'm being honest, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's felt that way. And there are times when I felt like, man, God must have left me, man. You know, because I mean, I thought He would be here with me and showing me His favor and His grace in this thing. But you know, those are our emotions, and that's how we feel. But I do believe that God, you know, not only do I believe, I know that God is the grand master planner and He sees everything on a grand scale. So what you're thinking is like so painful and hurtful to you, God has already planned it out 10, 15, 100 steps ahead and knows how this will lead to this and lead to that and lead to this and lead to that and this lead to your final, you being becoming the person that He wants you to be. And it's, of course it is painful to go through it. But I mean, the Lord did not spare, our Father God did not spare His own Son, Jesus Christ, on our behalf so that we may have life. So I think if we are partakers in the suffering just a little bit, then we can also be partakers in His wondrous glory. So let us hold fast to the profession of our faith. And there's nothing more beautiful than to live a life with Jesus Christ. Next video, I will continue from here. This video is a lot shorter than the first. So, you know, for people who don't have the desire, I won't say the attention span, the desire to sit through a 17-minute video. God bless, and I will see you guys in the next one.